Enterprises, and I'd like to welcome you all today to our very first Best Practices webinar that is exclusively for our subscribers and listeners who are outside of North America. And this is the first time we're conducting one of these sessions. Some of you may be aware that we do these regularly in the States on a monthly basis. And we're starting to open these up for our listeners in Europe and throughout Europe and the rest of the world. And I'm very pleased to have with me today Pieter de Klerk, who's an executive consultant with Mainnovation, and he's going to be presenting today's topic, Test Your Benchmarking Skills. And a little bit about Pieter, for those of you who are not familiar with him. He has a Master's of Science degree in Aerospace Engineering from the Technical University of Delft and over 20 years experience in maintenance and asset improvement projects. He's been with Mainnovation for the past 13 years, serving as delivery manager of the EAM team. And he's also co-author of the book, Value-Driven Maintenance. And good morning, Pieter, and welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Rona, and good afternoon for the listeners here. Thanks for being here.
I'll have to remember that. And Pieter, I just want to give our listeners a couple of minutes to join the session. And I understand you're going to be giving away a signed copy of the book that you co-authored, VDM, or Value-Driven Maintenance. And can you maybe take a minute and tell us a little bit about what prompted you to come up with that philosophy and write that book, and why it's important for today?
Yeah, Rona, we'll do that. Thank you. Well, we saw in the past that the maintenance is mostly seen as a cost center, and we think that it really can add value to a company. So we moved on that idea, and based on that we came to value-driven maintenance, and it's really a methodology to demonstrate the value of the maintenance department and that it can add to your organization. Well, it's not totally new. It's more of a bridge between different maintenance philosophies and how you can set them in the best way in your organization to create what I say the most value. It also simplifies, therefore, boardroom discussions because you talk about money and not just about failures or problems. I think one of the main parts of VDM is benchmarking. It has a quantitative control model and industry benchmarks below it, and therefore I think this seminar really contributes to that methodology, but it also can be seen as itself.
That's great. All right. Well, yeah, I guess, learning to speak the language of finance is something that no matter what your job title is important to get to all of us, no matter what our position is. And I just do want to go over something quick before I turn things over to Pieter, that for our listeners out there, we are recording today's session, and we'll be sending the link to all the attendees and registrants. And so we'll be doing that via email at the conclusion of the session. We'll also have a survey at the end. You can give us a little feedback, maybe let us know other topics of interest. And Pieter has agreed to stay and answer any questions at the end of the session. And so please feel free to type them at any point in the questions feature in GoToWebinar. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to you, Pieter.
Okay, thank you, Rona, and welcome everyone. I will start with the eMaint webinar, Test Your Maintenance Benchmarking Skills. Well, we see that, like I said, one of the cornerstones to set up and design your maintenance and reliability engineering department is benchmarking with good data, so it helps to support your improvement programs and that you know that you're on the right track. So let me go to the first slide. Personal introduction. Well, here you see my picture. Rona already told most of it. Like I said, 13 years employed at Mainnovation and also did a lot of benchmark studies. I hope you can benefit that from today. A little introduction of Mainnovation before we start with the webinar. It's a consultancy firm specialized in improving maintenance, reliability and asset management. It's founded in 2000, and then we had a steady growth since that time up until this point. Well, we're developers of the value-driven maintenance methodology. You see a photo of the book next to it. And we are recognized as thought leader and pioneers in maintenance business intelligence. Well, we have offices. We are a Dutch-based company, but we are now offices in the Netherlands, Belgium, UK, and in the USA. We have 4 service lines on which our advice is based on. The first one is strategy and process consultancy. In this service line, auditing and benchmarking takes an important place. We also do asset management strategy, PAS 55 certification, standardization of work processes, and all stuff like that. Another service line is our CMMS or EAM, Enterprise Asset Management Service line of business intelligence. Here we implement and support EAM systems like Maximo, SAP, Infor or eMaint. And we also have 2 types of KPI dashboards in Cognos for IBM and SAP Business Objects. Well, our first service line is about reliability engineering, to set up maintenance concepts, but also training and coaching in RA techniques. We also implement software systems that helps you to define your preventive maintenance programs and MRO spare part analysis. Well, our last service line is more of a big database with interim and change managers. We can send it to companies if they require some. There are people in Mainnovation, but also out of Mainnovation, who can be hired as interim or change manager. Well, if I go to our customer base, you see there are a lot of customers in different branches and industries with a lot of different names in Dutch, in Holland, but also in the international markets. Okay, that was the short introduction regarding Mainnovation. Now I go to the agenda of this webinar itself. I start with the background of benchmarking. What is benchmarking? What are the definitions of it? And with which partners you can benchmark your maintenance organization the best way, so you get the best results. Based on that, if you know whom you want to benchmark, you can see which KPIs you can use to get your best comparison and best overview of how your maintenance department is performing. Well, the third one is to go to an interactive case, a description of the Pillroll case. It's a short description of a fictitious case with real life data. And we're going to also, it will be the interactive part of this webinar. And we can see how benchmarking can contribute with defining your maintenance strategy and your plans for the future to really improve the performance of that technical department. And I end with some closing remarks and questions in the end, of course. Okay, why this webinar? Well, what we saw, that earlier webinars similar like this that have been held in the USA and in the Netherlands show that almost 3/4 of all participating companies are measuring their KPIs internally, but they have a high need for qualitative benchmark data to see if their KPIs are in line with other companies and where are the improvement areas. 85% of the companies would like to join such a program. Well, how does such a program works and what is required to effectively set up a benchmarking program, I will tell you in the next slides. But first of all, of course, we are interested in how you are the participants of the webinar, or are you involved in any maintenance benchmark program. So I will now go to the first poll. Rona, you can launch it now, please. Okay, Rora, maybe one thing, I cannot hear you anymore. I don't know if I'm the only one or that different people.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry I had muted earlier, but the responses that we saw from our listeners was that they're currently using the maintenance benchmarking, and it's been a real help, and they're here to learn more.
Okay, well, thanks. I think that's a good start for this webinar, so maybe a lot of things will sound familiar if we go through the next slides, and hopefully yeah, it can add some additional information. Well, I go to the definition of benchmarking. Well, benchmarking is a philosophy. Well, I give you some quotes yeah, from one of the CEOs of a company who really endorsed benchmarking. He said, one of the hardest things is sitting in your own closet and dreaming up a new idea by yourself. Another one, someone somewhere has a better idea, find out who has that better idea, learn it and put it into action fast. Well, if you can see from who those quotes are, they are from Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric. He was a strong believer in benchmarking, and he made General Electric one of the most valuable companies in this world. Well, this quote can be summarized and also used within General Electric for presentations is one, still with pride. Well, the real meaning, of course, the statement is that there is always room for improvement if you are open to learn. Well, what is benchmarking actually? One of the definitions of benchmarking is the process of comparing the performance of companies on a continuous basis and using that to improve the performance. So it consists of two important parts. One of them is measuring the performance to see where am I on that ladder, and the other one is how do I get up the ladder. So it's not only seeing where you are, but also helping you to improve and improve in the right direction. Well, I think that will be demonstrated in the case later on. So to go a little bit deeper in the benchmarking process, well, what kind of levels of benchmarking do we have? We have the strategic benchmarking. It's getting an impression of the strategy and competitive advantages of corporations. This is on a company level. I think for the maintenance benchmarking, we need to go one level deeper. We go to the operational benchmarking. Here you compare costs, customer satisfaction, quality, delivery times, etc. This is the appropriate level for the benchmarking of the maintenance organization in your technical department. For example, how high are my maintenance costs? Is my uptime below or above average, etc. Well, on that level you can benchmark on different subjects. For example, on products and services. Well, this is mostly more applicable for benchmarking, for example, for maintenance contractors. You can benchmark price-quality ratios, daily rates, etc. You can also benchmark business resources or machinery. In this case, you have to be really, the machines have to really be comparable with each other. So in most cases, we use benchmarking on the primary and supporting processes of your benchmark organization. So that's one. We're going to benchmark our maintenance processes or maintenance competences with some red KPIs. It's also important that we benchmark with a peer group that really you get the best results. You want to look at, compare apples with apples. But there are different ways. Of course, you can do some internal benchmarking. That's, in this way, you compare independent business unit with one or more business units within the same company. Of course, those business units have to be comparable, compatible with each other. Well, if you don't have a lot of internal companies to benchmark, you go to the external benchmarking. And then you can benchmark two ways. You can benchmark within your industry and branch in the same product market combination, or you can benchmark outside your industry branch. Well, if we go one step further, what is the best way for benchmarking your technical department? We say choose a partner within your same industry or in the same branch. Well, the advantages are that you have one group of partners for all maintenance processes are similar. preventive maintenance, warehousing, safety, etc. The processes are also highly comparable with each other. And last but not least, the acceptance of the results will be higher because you can say companies look alike. If we go to on the right side, you see some averages per branch, and here you see, for example, technical availability of petrochemical plants. The average is 98%. That's because it's a full continuous process, and the effort to have a high reliability is really important. If you go, let's say, to paper-based companies, they have batch-like processes which gives other demands and impact on your technical availability. So therefore, if you want good answers, if your technical availability is comparable or where you are, you can better, if your petrochemical company, go into that branch and not compare also with paper companies, because then you can maybe draw the wrong conclusions. Of course, there are some disadvantages of only benchmarking in your industry, in your branch. What you say best in class is not per se best in industry, and best practices outside the industry will not appear. Some examples of that is RCM, reliable simple maintenance. Well, that is founded in the airline industry, but now it's common practice, I think, in every maintenance organization who will help to improve their preventive maintenance. Another example is TPM. It's from the automotive industry, but now also applicable in paper, food, and also fine chemical. Companies are using TPM or TPM-like methods. So now we know what benchmarking is. We know with whom we like to benchmark. We go into the evolution of the maintenance benchmarking over the last years. Well, we see a positive trend in how the organizations are using benchmarking. There are also a lot of studies within maintenance organizations, maintenance branch organizations, but there are still some common pitfalls. And one of it is top management want each plant to be best in class. They first want to see, am I doing the right things and not, am I learning from it? Well, data collection is too labor intensive. I come that also in the next chapter when I go to KPI definition. That's one of the things you have to take in account. The data collection, I show you some things that can eliminate that. Also, data validation is underestimated. You must know the story behind the numbers. Well, an example is that we did a benchmark study some while ago with a company who scored really good at maintenance cost versus the replacement value of the plant. But if you wandered through the plant, you saw that it was in really poor state. What happens, they replaced, if something broke down, they replaced it immediately. And those replacement costs were on the investment budget and not on the maintenance budget. So we have to do some recalculation to get the right results. So the story behind the numbers is really important to give good explanations. Well, another one, you can of course have reliable data yourself, but you also want to benchmark with reliable data of external benchmark partners. If you don't have an internal partners in your company, well, that's not publicly available. If you go through the internet, you find some websites with data, but they are very high and low together. Everyone can enter the data, so you don't know if that's the right data you see in there. And of course, it's only effective if you do it in a continuous process. I can say that enough. It's all about changing mindsets and just not seeing if you're the best or not. Okay, we go to the next session, KPI definition. Well, I will go through some guidelines for making your KPI toolset work. First of all, is go for standard definitions. Don't reinvent the wheel. A lot of smart people have already thought about good KPIs, which tells you the best about how is your maintenance department performing. So please reuse that, but be smart enough to adapt them for your own company if necessary, of course. Another lesson we learned ourselves about 10 to 15 years ago that we need to limit the number of KPIs you're going to work with. Keep it to 10 to 15. Skip redundancy, design a hierarchy if possible. It would tell you enough. You can see that in the Pillroll case we will use as a benchmarking example later. Third of all, keep it practical and measurable. 90% should be captured from your EIM system directly, so you know that all data is reliable. In the next few slides I show you a little bit of sample of some internal benchmarking of a dredging company, and they also used the benchmarking for seeing how good is the quality of the data in their EIM systems, and I can show you some results of that in the next slides. Well, the fourth one is structure your KPIs in a logical framework that helps you understand relationships and set right priorities. Well, like I said, there are some standard definitions already in place, of course from the SMRP, the American Maintenance Foundation. We also in VDM, we have a KPI framework, which I will go into deeper a little bit later, but also the European Federation of Maintenance Benchmarking has a KPI set, and below that you see a little example of those KPIs. They are divided: top management, maintenance management, and maintenance technology. So now I go to the next slide and go a little bit deeper in the framework, the VDM framework. Here you see all the competences of a regular maintenance organization. You see two circles, the cost control circle and the asset utilization circle. Well, you start of course with your maintenance budgets on one hand, the equipment performance on the other hand, what availability you must get the coming year, and you have the demands from your safety, health and environment. Well, to gather that, you go to the reliability engineering and see how much preventive work you must do to meet those demands. The work is planned, prepared, and is executed. Well, that leads one hand to the registration of costs, and the other hand, of course, of all the losses that occurred the past time. Well, you can analyze, of course, the losses that will be input for your next cyclus of maintenance budgeting and equipment performance planning. To support those processes and the execution, there are four supporting competences. The first one is the MRO supply chain management. That's all the warehousing, all your spare parts that are required to execute the maintenance. Other one is the service supply management, your outside maintenance costs. Skill and tools, you must have the right people in place and the right tool sets. And the last one is knowledge about your equipment, your technical documentation and your drawings must be up to date. Well, each of those competences has one KPI. I go through a few. Of course, for cost control, an important one is maintenance cost per asset replacement value. For the asset utilization is technical availability. Reliability looks at preventive maintenance versus total maintenance cost, well, etc. In the next, in the Pillroll case, we go into a little bit deeper of all those KPIs. I will now move on to the next slide. The example of the internal benchmarking of the dredging company. Well, they wanted to benchmark their vessels internally. Like I said, one has to, of course, compare the performance between the different plants. On the other hand, to see how good their data is in their EAM system. Well, they started out with all the VDM KPIs, and I think 2 or 3 we adjusted to those dredging company because they were they had more meaning for those companies themselves. Well, the first conclusion is, if we go to the cost control, we see that one vessel has 0 cost compared to other vessels. Well, we went a little bit deeper in the reason behind it, and it seems that they booked all their material costs on the stock out location instead of proper functional locations and all work orders. The tool only gave results or material cost booked on work orders on functional locations like the engine room or the deck, etc. So that was one point, to go to the captain and the chief engineer of that vessel and help them to to register the cost at the right place and see what benefits them to get more insight in their cost registration. Well, a second analysis example is within the planning and preparation. For that we go one level deeper in the next slide. Here you see the KPI was the number of the percentage of work orders they put on a short-term or long-term repair list. The long-term repair list is for if they have yard repairs once every half year or once every year. And short-term is, for example, they were sailing or they had bad weather conditions, and that was the maintenance they can execute on that way. Well, what we see here, that's on the upper right vessel, they had a lot of amounts of work orders they put on the short-term repair lists. But we see at quarter 1 and quarter 2, it really went down. On another vessel, we saw it really went up in Q4 and in Q1 of the next year. So what was the reason that the chief engineer of the vessel in the upper right corner went to another vessel to the upper low corner? And he started directly to put to get more grip on his work and put them on those repair lists. So you can see that the internal best practice can be found in benchmarking, also in internal benchmarking, and it's also a good way now to convince other vessels to also be more plannable and see what can it benefits, because you can show a good example of a colleague of them. So that was a little example of some internal benchmarking. Now we go to the Pillroll case. I see there is a little mistake in the slide. Okay, I will give you a background of the company Pillroll, and then we go to vote 2 and see what you think we should focus on. Pillroll develops, produces and sells medicines that retrieve the old age infirmities. The market is growing. Recently the pressure on costs has been increased by the board of the company, and the management want to cut the maintenance budgets with 1 million euros. There are no incidents on safety or health. The profit was 13 million euros in 2012. The production loss due to maintenance was 10%. The maintenance budget is 15 million and the stock value is 12.5 million. The technical productivity or wrench time that the actual mechanics are working on work orders is 55%, and the asset replacement value is 700 million euros. So based on these data, we go to the second poll, Rona, and see on which area we think we should focus on.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the second poll. And what Peter is asking is, what would be your primary purpose, okay, in this? Would you be looking for number 1, increasing uptime? In this particular instance, or 2, would you be looking at lowering maintenance costs? Or 3, would you be looking to reduce spares? Or number 4, would you be looking to improve safety compliance? All right, so we're just asking you to type your answers directly into the keyboard and let us know, and we'll go ahead and share the results in just a minute. Okay, just take another moment. All right, well, thank you for your feedback, and let me go ahead and share it. And Peter, it looks like what our listeners have told us is that 50% say they would increase uptime, and half say they would lower maintenance cost in this instance. Okay?
Okay, Rona, thank you. Well, that's a nice result, and maybe we can see if benchmarking can see which one is right, or what the right focus will be. So now I'll go into a little bit deeper into the maintenance organization of Pillroll, and we go to the third poll afterwards. What we see, maintenance schemes are based on supplier OEM recommendations. Majority of the preventive maintenance is outsourced. maintenance and production are completely separated from each other. The lot registration is limited. They only do it for their packaging lines. Repairs take often longer than expected. All work requests become work orders. The MRO warehouse is not closed, and stock out reports are reported frequently. And the EAM system is available. Well, if I go a little bit to my own history, when I worked at Ernst & Young, often we did interviews in maintenance organizations, and this is the kind of things you heard. And based on these recommendations or based on these results, you have to make an improvement plan. Well, therefore, the first question out of poll 3 is, what do you think the improvement plan is? And then we can see if we have the benchmarking data, and maybe your insights will be gained more and your improvement can be really more focused. So, Rona, we put on our doctor's coat again and go to the third vote.
Okay, I bet our listeners didn't know they were going to be working hard during this webinar. So again, Peter is asking, what would be your first recommendation in this instance? And answer number 1 through 5 directly in your keyboard. Would you be looking to number 1, improve budgeting maintenance costs? Or perhaps number 2, integrate maintenance with production? Or 3, set up a proper PM program or preventive maintenance program? Or number 4, would you be looking to limit outsourcing and increase insourcing? Or would you be interested in number 5 as your first recommendation, optimizing and closing warehouse spares? All right, so cast your vote 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And we'll see how we did. I was trying to vote. I don't think I get a vote though. All right. Very good. Let me close out the poll and share the results here. And it looks like we had just one selection, number 3. Setting up a proper preventive maintenance program would be the first recommendation of our listeners. Okay?
Okay, Rhoda, thank you for that. I think we have an audience that is really one-minded. Well, now we see if we can also back that improvement or that focus up with some maintenance data, and maybe there are some other things that we can be doing. So now we go over to the benchmarking part of the Pillroll organization. For that, we're going to log in to the VDM control panel, or My VDM as it's called. It's a database with, I think, about 200 to 300 companies of different branches who would all have entered their validated data, and we use it for benchmarking it with each other. I'm not going to log in live because due to the webinar, yeah, I might get some disturbances, so I've put in some screen copies, but it follows the exact routine. So we log in. In the next step, you can select your company, and then we go to the first page that's entering your maintenance benchmarking data. You see at this screen, you see a lot of figures that are put in the slide earlier. You can see here back at the maintenance cost, 15 million euros, replacement value 700 million euros. We only need 16 data elements for all our VDM KPIs. So each data element is good, is easy to collect, and good to and easy to be validated against. So if we have entered all those values, we go to the next set and see what are the results on the KPI. On the KPIs, well, you see them on your left-hand side, but it doesn't say anything if you are scoring high or are you scoring low. So now we go to the actual benchmarking. We go to the next tab, KPI Measurement, the benchmarking. In this screen, it's possible to select industries, or one level deeper, the branch within an industry. You can benchmark with companies only in a specific country or region, or if you, for example, have a really big technical department or a low technical department, you can get also values on minimal or maximum maintenance cost to narrow your the set of benchmarking partners and make it more data more reliable and more comparable with each other. Well, in this case, we just clicked on industry, pharmaceutical, medical, and healthcare consumer products. You can see here in type of benchmarking that this tool is also used for internal benchmarking. If companies like, they can get a login and they can only get a view of their own company. They can benchmark it internally between holdings, business groups, or they can benchmark, of course, their data with the rest of the data within the database. It, of course, is anonymous for those people, but you can see your own data in there. Well, if you go to the benchmarking and you click on Update Selection, you see your benchmarking graphs. Well, only two are shown here. I will go into them a little deeper. You see the first one, maintenance cost versus asset replacement value. You see you're on the 8th place of the 13 companies, and technical availability you are more on the left side of the population. So now we go to the control panel. In this screen you see on your left hand side all your KPIs, your own values, the maximum, average and minimum, and on the other side it's represented more visually, so each KPI gets its own color. If it's red, of course, you score below average. If it's green, above, and it's yellow, you score about the average score of the population you are benchmarking with. So now if we go a little bit deeper into this figure, well, the first poll was where to focus. Well, if you see now, the focus will be on asset utilization, because there are the red spots. You see it on here. It is negatively influenced by, of course, KPI reliability engineering. Yeah, I think the recommendation of the people, I think, is correct, that the percentage of preventive maintenance is rather low for this company. Also, maintenance execution is in the red. The MRO, supply chain management, and also skill and tool training cost versus labor cost is very low. So now we know the areas on which we should work on. But now is how can we get those measures into the green. So we go also to the next and last poll for our contestants, where to improve. Here you see, okay, Rhoda, can you start it up? You can see all the graphs. Yeah.
All right. What Peter is asking is, what do you think is the main cause of the current problems? And 1, is it lack of training? 2, is it technician productivity or that wrench time is too low? 3, is it lack of preventive maintenance? Or 4, is it too many or perhaps the incorrect spares are on hand? So if our listeners out there don't mind, just take a moment and let us know your answer. Is it 1, lack of training? 2, wrench time is too low? 3, lack of preventive maintenance? Or 4, are there too many or the wrong spares in stock? All right, I think we have our votes cast. Thank you for that. So let me go ahead and share the results. And it looks like right now our listeners are divided, Peter, between 1 and 3. 1 being 50% saying lack of training, and the other half are saying lack of preventive maintenance.
Okay.
Right, so I will hide those results.
Okay, Rona, thanks for that. Well, I think all 4 were correct, of course, because when we look deeper into you see those 4 areas are the areas that are really can have improvement. On the one hand, you see the preventive maintenance for total maintenance. If we go increase preventive maintenance, we go do more planned work, and I think if we do more planned, we get less failures, less corrective work that will also directly improve your technical availability. On the other hand, if you increase more training, lack of training, your repair time maybe can be decreased because people have more understanding of the failure and failure mechanisms, and they can really improve their the repair skills, but also can help in the technical availability. Of course, if you increase your preventive maintenance and you get your people more trained, it will have also directly a positive effect on your technician productivity, because they can be put on more on a plan-based basis than just waiting for failures to happen and then go out and repair them. You also see that the MRO inventory value, of course the KPI is red, but I don't think the issue is that there is too much maintenance, but maybe the wrong parts are on stock, because we saw in the beginning that there were a lot of stock out situations in the plant. So we don't focus on that directly, but maybe later on. Well, if we can improve on those three areas, you will see that your technical availability will improve automatically. So if we know the areas, know where to improve, then we go to the last of our slides of the case. How can we improve? Well, of course, it's important to get first a realistic target. How many percent will we improve? We don't want to be best practice from day one. And of course, the second one is the business case. How much can we invest? May we invest to get those results? So the VDM, myvdm.com calculated, if you improve your uptime with 1%, and of course Pillroll can also sell all those extra pills they produced, it will lead to a 1.4 million euro profit increase. So let's say we wanted to improve the uptime with 2%. So you can get an increase of 2.8 million of your profits. Well, we have three examples of our improvement areas. We want to increase the mean time between failures, so we have less failures. Of course, we want to improve the productivity, and we want to reduce our mean time to repair. Now, some examples of improvement projects will be create top 10 performance killer analysis, try to see how you can reduce failures on those equipments that really fail a lot. And of course, we're going to optimize our preventive maintenance program using, for example, RCM methodology. Other one is we improve our productivity. We'll invest in training. I think the people who do RCM analysis, let's involve all the mechanics in it, that they understand the mechanisms behind preventive and corrective work, and also have some commitment in the plants. And last thing, to reduce our mean time to repair, like I said, we can invest in technical training for those mechanicals, and we can have some analysis of critical spares. Well, in most cases, if you do top 10 performance killer analysis and using RCM, one of the things is to look critically at your spares and see if you have the right spares for the failures and for your preventive maintenance. So probably we can increase the reliability of our warehouse department at the same time. So now we see that how benchmarking helps really analysis. Our gut feeling in the beginning was preventive maintenance, and now you can also have some facts and figures behind it and really go to the main focus of your technical department for the coming years. So now I'm almost at the end of the presentation. Some closing remarks. Benchmarking, of course, will not bring the ultimate truth. It has many pitfalls. You must compare apples with apples. You have the right KPIs. You must have reliable data. It's not about good or bad. It's about gaining insight in your strengths and weaknesses and learning how they can be improved. Of course, it's important not to improve at all areas at the same time, and I think we also saw in the case that benchmarking can also help you to focus and see where you want to benchmark yourself with, and which are the areas your improvement projects will appear. Setting realistic and achievable targets, of course, don't make the cost higher than the benefits, and eventually win the game, so we can steal with pride, like Jack Welch was saying. All right, this was the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for your attention. I will give it back to Rona.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. And for our listeners out there, Peter has agreed to stay for a few more minutes and answer any questions. So please go ahead and type them directly into the question feature in GoToWebinar. And remember, there will be a survey at the end, and after completing that, one person will be selected to receive a signed copy of the Value-Driven Maintenance book, which of course goes into the concept of how you add value in even greater depth. And on that note, Peter, you did cover, so many different best practices, and how do you determine which practice is really going to add value, which one's going to work and which one won't in particular instances?
Well, of course, you look at your organization, your processes, data, what kind of IT systems are there. You see if best practices within similar industry and branches are really helped to improve those areas. I think looking at the company itself, mostly have also ideas for improvements, and bringing in some best practices outside helps you decide the best practice in place. If you have an organization that is really at the low end of professionalism, you should not implement best practices that really require high-skilled personnel and things like that. So you all take those things in account and for selecting your best practice.
Okay, and one of our, I think we had some responses in the beginning. Some people have a benchmarking program in place and are looking for ways to maybe improve upon it. But for those that don't, how do you set up the business case? How do you really justify the case for an improvement agenda or for benchmarking?
Yeah, I think the example already in the Pillroll case was there. Also, VDM helps you to see if you know which area to improve. You can use, we call it the value drive analysis. For example, you focus on uptime or on cost, and you can see how much value will bring 1% of those. For example, uptime in Pillroll case, but how much will it bring me if we lower our costs with 1%? What is our improvement opportunity? And that helps you to see how much cost you can spend to gain those improvements. Sometimes we use simulation techniques, value calculations and things like that. You just set up a proper business case before you start with your improvements.
Okay. And now one last question came in, Peter, is can this be really applied to any industry? Is there, is benchmarking something really universal, or are there any limitations or places where it works or, better, or where it may not be as important to apply it?
Well, I think it can be applied to any industry, but I think industries, of course, with a big part of maintenance and a lot of rotating equipment is more applicable than for companies, for example, cable companies who does only a lot of inspections and have their equipment mostly under the ground. I think there's a little bit less, the added value of a benchmarking is lower than in standard or normal factories, as to say.
Makes sense. All right. Well, I think we're at the end of the session, and I really would like to thank you, Peter, for sharing your information today and sharing your expertise. And I'd like to thank our listeners who joined in. And again, we're just starting to launch these sessions throughout Europe, and we'd love to come, to hear from our listeners how we did and what topics are really interesting to you and will help add value, so that we can bring in experts like Peter and his team for things that are really on your mind and will help you solve your day-to-day problems. So thanks again, Peter. And
okay, you're welcome, Rona.
And thanks again to our listeners, and we hope to see you all the next time. Take care. This is Rona Palmer from eMaint.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.